I remember reading on my free time a long time ago, Bakunin's life on Wikipedia. All right, I didn't only read Wikipedia. I don't only read Wikipedia here on stream. Sometimes I do on my own time. That was a long time ago. And Bakunin is really fucking funny. Are you cheating on us? Reading Wikipedia without us? Okay, it was a long time ago. All right, I didn't even think about it back then. I'm sorry. It was a really long time ago. I was pretty young. All right, we're gonna read it really quickly, okay? This is not a segment of me reading Wikipedia or whatever. I know people don't like it when I start just going off reading, but this is funny, okay? Bakunin's adventures, okay? All right, the reason why this is funny, it's funny for many different reasons. Mainly is because back then things were just so fucking different. People would just do revolutions seemingly casually, and they would just do things like incredible things that you couldn't even like think about. You can't make that shit up, and they do them, and it sounds, at least the way it's written, it sounds like it's no big deal. That's just part of being an anarchist in the 19th century. And because of that, it makes them not only funny, but it makes these revolutionists, these revolutionaries kind of badass. So this is Bakunin in 1848 and 1843. I've never seen Bakunin like this. Every time I see Bakunin, it's like this. He's a bit scarier here. So revolutionary activity and imprisonment. This is Bakunin. In the 1840s, he moved from philosophical studies to revolutionary agitation. Learning of Bakunin's radicalism, the Russian government told Bakunin to return to Russia. When he did not, Russia stripped him of his rights as a nobleman and sentenced him in absentia to penal labor in Siberia. Without steady financial support, Bakunin became an itinerant, traveling Europe, meeting the people who had influenced him, such as proto-communist Wilhelm Weytling, philosopher Karl Marx, anarchist Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. He was deported at the Russian government's request. All right, so the Russian government says, come back to Russia. You're becoming too radical. And then Bakunin's like, no, I prefer being homeless and just meeting the people who have made me radical. So he goes traveling Europe without much money and just as it's itinerant. I think that's homeless. At least in French, it means homeless. Meeting Karl Marx and Proudhon and Weytling and other communists along the way. And then he's deported to Russia. So he's in trouble. And he's like, fuck. When the French king Louis-Philippe I abdicated during this February 1848 revolution, Bakunin returned to Paris and basked in the revolutionary milieu. So he goes back to Paris. With the French government's support, he headed to Prussian Poland to agitate for revolt against Russia, but never arrived. He attended the 1848 Prague Slavic Congress to defend Slavic rights against German and Hungarian nationalism, and participated in its impromptu insurrection against the Australian Habsburgs. Uncaptured, he wrote, Appeal to the Slavs. Aufruf an die Slaven. At the end of the year, advocating for a Slavic federation and revolt against the Austrian, Prussian, Turkish, and Russian governments. It was widely read and translated. All right, so here's for the more radical stuff. After participating in the 1848 Prague uprising and the 1849 Dresden uprising, Bakunin was imprisoned, tried, sentenced to death, extradited multiple times, and ultimately placed in solitary confinement in the Peter and Paul fortress of St. Petersburg, Russia, in 1851. So that's where he was, okay? We can all see. 3 years later, he transferred to Schlüsselburg fortress near St. Petersburg for another 3 years. So then he was sent there for another 3 years. Prison weathered, but did not break Bakunin, who retained his revolutionary zeal through his release. He did, however, write an autobiographical genuflection confession to the Russian emperor, which proved to be a controversial document upon its public discovery some 70 years later. The letter did not improve his prison conditions. In 1857, Bakunin was permitted to transfer to permanent exile in Siberia. He married Antonia Kwiatkowska there, before escaping in 1861. So he escaped Siberia, right, where he was in permanent exile. He escaped Siberia in 1861. He goes to Japan. So first to Japan, then to San Francisco. Takes a boat to San Francisco, across the country to New York, then crosses America, goes to New York, takes a boat, arrives to London by the end of the year. The man was fucking bored in Siberia, in permanent exile because of his revolutionary activities. So what he does, he goes to Japan, takes a boat, arrives in San Francisco, crosses all of America, arrives in New York, takes a boat, and arrives in London, in Europe, to continue his revolutionary activities. In London, Bakunin reunited with Herzen and Ogarev. Bakunin collaborated with them on their Russian-language newspaper, but his revolutionary fervor exceeded their moderate reform agenda. Bakunin's 1862 pamphlet, The People's Cause, Romanov, Pugachev, or Pestel, criticized the Russian Tsar for not using his position to facilitate a bloodless revolution and forego another Pugachev's rebellion. In 1863, Bakunin joined in an unsuccessful effort to supply armed men for the Polish January uprising against Russia. Bakunin reunited with his wife, moved to Italy the next year, where they stayed for 3 years. And then it's far from being done. But that's just fucking funny, at least to me. Escapes Russia, does quite literally the whole circumference of the planet just to go back to Europe to continue fighting.